Good morning, everyone. We're back for another Aras Innovator demo series. This week we're going to talk about our change management package, and joining me today is Lisa Costa, one of our solution consultants and demo extraordinaire, freshly back from vacation.
Hello.
And so we'll jump right into the demo here. It's a 30 minutes all demo. We're not going to give you a sales pitch. And each time we get in, we're going to show you a different capability of Aras Innovator, and when we get to the end, I'll show you what's coming up. But we do keep that on the website, and you can go to aras.com/demo to see that. So with that, we will head right into the demo here, and we'll talk, like I said, the change management. Talk about change requests, assessments that you use to manage your product, and how we use that to give visibility throughout your enterprise and through the product lifecycle.
Thank you, Dave. Great. So I'm going to head right into Aras Innovator. My local install that I have here, I'm going to go in as Mike Miller and log into Aras Innovator. All right, there you go. All right, so I wanted to start a little differently than last time we did this one, so I'm going to start out with the user experience, then we'll go into the administration. So from a user experience using the change management of Aras Innovator, the typical way that people are going to know what they currently have to work on or what items are waiting for their review is they're going to use their in-basket. So as you can see here, I'm logged in as Mike Miller, and what I'm seeing right here is my in-basket. In my in-basket, I have several things I need to work on. There are a few problem reports that need to be verified, and then there are ECOs that are in the draft changes standpoint or state, waiting for me to complete those. We'll look at the workflow. One of the options is to complete them. The other is to go to other reviews. And then there's also a project that I'm working on with a team, and right now there's a task assigned to me. So like I said, typical user experience of change management is instead of the old days, for those of us that are old, with a stack of folders that showed up on your desk, what you have is an in-basket that shows you the things you have to work on, right? So the tasks themselves are relatively easy. Like if I looked at this task, I would open it up and I would see that this is the task assigned to me. It's called draft changes for this ECO number. And these are the things that somebody needs me to do for this particular ECO. I need to review the change form for what needs to be done, based on the suggestions, make the changes to all the affected parts and bills of materials. And if there's a review required, I need to review it, submit it to review, otherwise close the change. So right now I haven't completed any of these. If I could have actually completed some of this and saved it and come back later to complete it. But right now what we're going to do is take a look at some other aspects of this particular change. So what I can do here, so I've got the ECO itself, I can look at the actual workflow itself. So there is a live link to see, like I said, if for some reason, because I just came back from 4 days of vacation, I have no idea where that is in that workflow, I could look at it and say, okay, this particular ECO has already been through planning, and it's in this draft changes state where, again, based on that list of tasks you saw, my choices right now are either submit it for a subsequent review or to close that change, right? So again, I can look at the activity itself, I can look at the workflow I'm in, or if I've totally lost my mind and have no idea what this ECO is about, I can open up the ECO form itself. No comment about losing my mind, Dave. So here you can see that this is the detail. This is the actual form itself, the ECO form itself as to what's going on with this particular change. This is using what we call our Express ECO. So this Express ECO is basically, it's a modification. We are going to change this assembly. We're revising this assembly. You can see that it's just going to go, it's not going to be renumbered. It's going to remain the same number, but go to revision B. There's also a couple items being removed. And then if we go further down the list, you'll see that there's also some documents that are being modified. So this particular grid that you're seeing is what we call the impact matrix. So I'm looking at the change. I can see what's going on. I can see which items are being revised. Also, I'm seeing other items that are referenced by this assembly but are not currently being changed by this particular ECO. Well, I'm going to do one from scratch after we finish this so you can see more about the impact matrix and how it functions. But what I do want to show you is that with our latest iteration of the impact matrix, we have something called engineering document reviews. So basically what this ECO has happened is that somebody's decided we need to make a change. Somebody put the assembly on the change, but it was also determined that with that change, we also needed to update the drawing, the engineering drawing, and the actual 3D model that goes along with it. So in this case, a SOLIDWORKS file, but there was no need to change the actual office documents that go along with that. So on one form here, we have the ability to say, we're going to change the bill of material, but that BOM change also requires a modification of the documents. And in this case, we optionally chose to basically have this ECO spawn off what we call an engineering document review. And that means that it might be in your company that's a different set of people that modify the CAD drawings than approve the actual change to the BOM. And if that's the case, we can spawn this EDR. So both of these items are on the same EDR. I know I don't have to open that EDR up. I actually get this green light. So I personally know I'm okay right now to actually sign off on the ECO itself, because the folks who are in charge of the engineering document review have actually gotten that into a state where I can sign it off. That's why I've got the green light. Real quick, I'll show you an example of a gray light, or it's not finished yet. So I'll show you what it looks like if somebody has not finished the actual documents yet. So I literally can't sign off on this ECO because it's still the EDR, that they haven't completed reviewing the engineering documents. So that this particular EDR is not completed yet, so this ECO cannot be signed off. Just to show you what I mean, if I go to sign off and I say I want to vote now, and I go through the steps and say I want to close this change, and I type in my password, and I hit complete, it's going to tell me. So this is what that gray light. So if I had ignored the gray light on this, it's telling me that, you know what, the people in charge of reviewing that the CAD documents have been modified, or office documents, whatever the documents are that are related to this ECO, have not been completed, right? So again, I just want to show you real quick the difference. So this one, I can't sign off right now until somebody comes back with the documents being completed. This one can be signed off, and I can move it along, okay? Let's just take a real quick look at what an EDR looks like, and then we'll get into some other aspects of change management with the Aras Innovator. I'll sign this ECO off, release these items, and we'll talk about other things as well. So this is an EDR that got spawned automatically from the ECO. And what happened here is that there was a CAD drawing as well as a 3D model that needs to be modified. And again, they are independent documents. So the way Aras Innovator's data model works is that the documents themselves are items that can be put on changes themselves, either independently on EDRs or in the same ECO, totally up to you, the way your business process works. I would like to point out a couple things here. When you are looking at the EDR itself, even though I'm not on the CAD documents per se, the CAD documents are the affected items for this EDR, you can see here that I can very quickly use our visual collaboration and actually pop into the viewer. So if I'm the person that was looking at it, maybe I'm a nervous Nelly, and I want to make sure somebody really did swap out the fans that we were changing on this item, I can look to make sure that was really completed. So I can look at the 3D model. I can also look at the 2D drawing and make sure that also got updated to the latest information. So I've got the 2D drawing, I've got the 3D model. I can zoom in and out and take a look at these items. Now, I can also take a look at the conversation that happened. Maybe, like I said, it was a very long conversation. If there's any discussion that happened about these particular documents, you could see that here as well. We'll actually see that it's higher up and on the items themselves, but there can be markup and things like that associated with these particular items. So again, really quick, the ability to get to any discussion, to view the items on this item is part of our visual collaboration. I can be looking in the context of the change, but be able to actually see the stuff that's below it and be able to view those items. So like we said, this one, if I viewed the sign-offs, I can see what's happened, that it's pending closure. So what that means is, from a standpoint of you viewed the actual workflow of the EDR, the engineering document request has got a very simple workflow where it's pending closure. It's waiting for the ECO to be approved, and that will actually close out the EDR at the same time. So again, when I sign off on this ECO, is going to close the engineering document review and release the items on this ECO. Let's go to take a look at doing that, and then we'll talk more about other options for change in our case. So this guy here, number 15. So I'm going to say, yes, I've reviewed the change form, and we also took a look at the EDR. That the items have all been revised, everything's in order, and I'm going to submit it, or I'm going to, in this case, close the change, and I'm going to type my password very slowly so as not to irritate the audience again with my bad typing. So once I complete that item, so a couple things about our in-basket. The in-basket is very dynamic in nature. The fact that I did my part on that ECO makes it disappear from my in-basket. A couple notes about the way the in-basket works for activities is that if for some reason Dave signed off, if we both had it, if we were both signatories on that, and he had signed off the ECO, it would have disappeared out of my in-basket as well. So if you notify a group of people, but only certain people have to sign, or you're waiting for 3 out of 5, whatever the case may be, it is a very dynamic in-basket. So if we went over to our tools over here, and we looked at parts, and we searched for that particular item, so I know it's the extruder. So I want to look at the extruder assembly. So if we go back to this guy here, and so from a change management standpoint, when we look at this guy, what we'll see is that there's no longer a change pending on it. You can see that this ECO is released. That's the one we just signed off together. And if I looked at the history of this item, you would see that it was released by Mike Miller on 4/29, and it was released to revision B. Okay, so you can see here that it got released, and it was because it was promoted, and the promotion happened by extension of being on a change item. A couple more notes. I do want to look at I talked about the discussion panel before. So this is where you can see any kind of what led up to that change. You can see we had some visual collaboration. We had some photos from the test rig itself back on the date yesterday at 1:15. You can see here that somebody did update the CAD model. We had already looked at that through the context of the change items, but here you're seeing it kind of in the context of the visual collaboration of everything that's happened with this particular assembly, right? So again, visual collaboration, very handy tool. Everybody gets to see the markups, what kind of instigated that change. We replaced those fans and removed these items, and the things that have happened in general, what kind of led up to that. Okay? Great. Actually, if we do by thread date, you can sort this different ways. You could take a look at it in a review manner. It just makes the icons a little bigger right in the left-hand, on the right-hand side here. Or standard viewing, that means if you want to look at something bigger, you can just make it bigger yourself. Okay, so far we've signed off an ECO that was kind of like the Julia Child demo. It was all ready to go, and all I had to do was hit a button, and it released those items. There are other types of change items, so those were ECOs, but just real quick, we do have fully certified CM2 change management in that we do have things called PRs, problem reports. If you looked here, we have problem reports that are in the pending state, the verification state. All of our searching works the same way, by the way, and you can always sort by touching the top of the grid items. The columns will sort. So if you want to take a look at an item, a problem report is a totally different form, you'll see, than our very simplified Express ECO. Here it's very easy to see that that's a more complex form for a PR. This happens to be a PR about sourcing problems, and it's got radio buttons, things like that. The workflow looks a little different. But the way the CM2 change management functions, right? So this one is currently in the PR pending state. You'll see here that we have the ability to have multiple PRs can roll up into a single ECR, and then an ECN can actually have multiple ECRs roll up into the ECN. So totally different forms. We already saw an ECO, we saw an EDR, you just saw one example of a PR. Here we have a couple of ECNs. If we took a look at these engineering change notices or enterprise change notices, depending on what you want to call it, here you can see this was an initial release, so it actually was a new items were released and what those numbers were. Again, visual collaboration is persistent throughout the tool when you're using it. So you have the ability to view, the 3D items that were attached to that. Great. So ECRs, ECNs, PRs, document change orders. It's up to you guys to pick and choose. You saw me release documents as part of an ECO, but there is a totally separate document change order. So if you wanted to have a different workflow for releasing documents than releasing actual parts and items, you can have a different workflow there as well. So here you can see this is an example of a document change order. The form is very simplified, pretty similar to the ECO. All of these forms are totally up to you to change and modify and make it your own, and I will talk about the admin aspect in a second as well. So what I'd like to do is do an ECO from scratch, just so you guys can understand the impact matrix a little better. So I'm actually going to go back to that same assembly as before because I know it's a released assembly. So what I'm going to do is add that item to a change right from the search list. I'm going to say I'm going to add that item to a change. You can multi-select. Here is where you would decide, and again, as an administrator, you would decide which items show up for users to select, right? In my case, because I demo, I've got all of them up here, but I'm going to attach this to an Express ECO, create a new one. And what you'll see our impact matrix does, so it's going to look very similar to last time. It's that same item. If the action right now is in review, I do have a mandatory field here called title, so I'm going to say so I'm just going to do that. So what I'm doing here, so what you'll see is the highlighting is going to highlight in purple the item that's actually affected. So what you can see here, the parts that are affected are going to be in purple. So basically you saw me pick that assembly and say I want to release that assembly or add that item to a change because I want to modify it. And it put the action in a review state. What I can do here is that if I know for sure what I want to do, obsolete the part, or I want to create a new relationship, which means add an item, or I want to delete a row, would be deleting an item. But in my case, I just know I need to revise that assembly. I'm going to pick revise, right? A couple things I want you to notice is that it automatically did the where used in that it picked the parent assembly there. So it basically said, if you're truly going to revise this subassembly, I just want to let you know that it's being referenced by this higher level assembly. So it doesn't automatically say that you need to revise it. It's just helpfully suggesting to you it might be something you might want to consider, right? You also notice that it also, as a matter of fact, this particular subassembly is used in another higher level assembly. So it did a where used, and it brought onto the form all of the places that are referencing the subassembly, so all the parents, and suggesting that, hey, you might want to consider revising these as well. It also brought all the documents that are on the extruder as well, so all the office documents. So if I said, you know what, I'd also like to revise that document as well, it'll add it to the form. And this is where you would decide. If you do want to have that separate engineering document review, you could set that up here and say, you know what, yes, I'd like to create an EDR. And we put that on there. So again, it's just going to walk you through, and it's going to keep doing the children. Here you can see it put all the children. If I choose to also revise any of these guys here, like if I pick, let me try to pick something that might have other things associated with it. I don't know if I do. If I pick this guy here and I say I want to revise it as well, what it would continue to do is it would keep doing where used and keep doing children. So you see what it did here? It said, okay, Lisa, or Mike Miller, if you're going to revise this part has a document associated. Do you want to revise it as well? If I say yes, I do want to revise it as well, it'll do that. So it's just going to keep changing the form based on the decisions that I make. And I might have to put a product team. So here I've done that. So again, I just wanted to show the impact matrix because we only have 10 minutes left. So I wanted to show you how that form gets generated. Very simple for the users. It constantly does where used and children, and you just decide which ones truly do need to be affected items for this particular ECO. It puts it automatically into the workflow, so if I view the workflow on this guy, you'll see, unlike the other one that was kind of pre-baked when we came into it, you'll see that this one is at the submit ECO level, and based on the workflow, I'm the one that decides whether to cancel it or to put it into the planning state, and it would move on from here. So let's go take a look more from the admin standpoint, because we saw examples of workflow, activities and in baskets, EDRs, PRs, forms, things like that. So let's see a little bit about how things hang together. So if I look at the system as an administrator, so from a permission standpoint, if we go back to Mike Miller for 1 second, you'll see that Mike Miller does not have administration in his table of contents on the left-hand side here. We did do a couple things. We searched for parts, we searched for change, and we looked at his in-basket. But when we're logged in as an administrator, we get additional items in the table of content, and one of them, you can see there's many items that show up here, but we're going to go into the administration aspect and just take a quick look at the change items that we have in Aras Innovator. So if we took a look at our item detail for an ECO, right, so if we took a look at the Express ECO itself, you'll see that there's several items on here, but this is the one we want to look at. So the Express ECO form that we had before is defined by the item type called ECO. The workflow that's associated with it, all that kind of stuff is built into this. Administering Aras Innovator is very simple. Even when you're an administrator, the actual look and feel is very similar to the items themselves. Up at the top is the general information about Express ECOs, and down at the bottom is the detail, right? So if we took a look at the workflow tab, you would see which workflow is associated with the Express ECO. I could have gone to the workflow area and searched for workflows independently and found it. Here you can see who has the ability to create ECOs, right? So everybody in the world can add ECOs. Where it shows up in the table of contents is defined here. That it shows up under the category change management, which we saw when we looked at the table of contents for Mike Miller. But let's take a quick look at those workflows. So the workflow itself being used by the Express ECO is here. So this is the definition of why the workflow behaves the way it does. If I have permission to modify workflows, I could lock this item, right, and modify this workflow. So actually modifying workflows is very simple. If you felt the need to add another activity to this workflow, you could do it. If you want to create a path from this particular item to this one, you can. So now I've got a new activity and a new path. If you want to give a name to the path, I have no idea if that's spelled right. Just FYI. Right? And I've got that new activity, and I can give it a name. All right, so this is where you build in all the behavior, so you can see here about the paths, the notifications, things like that. Let's look at the step that we actually went through together called draft changes. So what you'll see here is that draft changes was assigned to Mike Miller, but it's not Mike Miller every time. It was assigned to Mike Miller because he plays the role of a team member for that particular product team, okay? So, and he had a voting weight of 100%, which means that just his signature moved it on and released that item, as we saw, right? When you look at paths, you'll see that we know from experience, signing that off, there was 2 ways out of draft changes. One was to close the change, one to submit it for review. You can see here that the submit for review is actually the default path. So if people didn't vote to change it, that's the path that it would automatically follow as a default, submit to review. So the assignments is to the team member. The notifications, we didn't have any notifications for this step. Notifications would be emails. So if you envision that there's times when there's somebody that's assigned the task, but then there's other people you need to send email to let them know things are happening, maybe even suppliers and things like that. Maybe you'd want suppliers to know that you're currently modifying this thing. You could send emails to people and notify them. So there is a difference between being notified and assigned, right? You can be kind of an observer, and we also do have the ability to trigger emails as opposed to people constantly having to come to Aras Innovator if they don't do that every day. I did want to show you the task list here. The task list, not list, list. The task list is what we saw on the form when Mike Miller double-clicked on the activity that was assigned to him, and it said, these are the things you have to do to complete the draft changes state. Very simple if you want to add another task to that list. It's almost like an engineering checklist. So if we said this is number 4, so if you want to add to the list, it's very simple to do. Next time somebody gets that draft changes state, they're going to see those 4 items to do now. Variables, things you can set. You can set variables. Server events would be things that get triggered by this activity, either before the activity or after the activity. And promotions would be anything that gets promoted based on that. So you can see here that they're going to go from the in planning to in work, or from in review to in work, or plan review to in work. So those are the promotions that happen on the items that are linked to this workflow. Really quick, you can see here there's a lot of definition, expected durations, who it's managed by, who we would escalate to. That would be the cases where you have defined process and you want to make sure that it doesn't sit in somebody's in-basket longer than 5 days, or you want to re-notify them. Reminder would be somebody that gets re-notified that they need to go back. And then if they don't complete something in the amount of time, it would escalate to a certain role, right? So all of that's possible to do. Giving people the ability to refuse or delegate their signature, all that kind of stuff is part of that workflow definition. And like I said, very simple. You guys can take the workflows that we have as they are, or you can modify them. The product does come with workflow maps for, so workflow maps for the Express ECO and all the other change types that we saw. If we took a look at the most complex one in there is the engineering change request workflow. Again, you can either use, this is the one prescribed by CM2 standards, but if you want to change it to something that is, more close to your process you're using today, it's all modifiable. All you have to do is be an administrator to be able to do that. But we have, again, a lot of functionality out of the box, a lot of automation with our Express ECO, our engineering document review, all the CM2 standard change management, all available to use as is or modify. But the great thing about Aras Innovator, of course, if none of these fit your business process, you would be able to create your own change items that fit your process better, and it's just all part of the system to be able to configure those types of solutions. So with that, that's only got 2 minutes left. Hopefully this is a good flavor for the change management available in Aras Innovator, the out-of-the-box stuff we offer, as well as some of the administrative stuff that you're able to change. And if you need more detail, please contact us, and we can certainly do a more in-depth demo for your company specifically and talk about the types of things that you'd like to accomplish with change management. Over to you, Dave. Do you have any questions?
We do have a couple questions. I think I'll just
One of them, why Lisa can't type in her password right?
Not yet. One thing to note, what Lisa's actually showing you is how we actually have a modeled interface instead of asking you to write a lot of code. And that's one of the key things that allows us to differentiate. So you don't have to have a lot of folks that can write thousands of lines of code. You can, as you can see, just like almost using Visio or other graphical tools, draw out your workflow and make everything happen. We have a question about CCing your corporate email of tasks and notifications. And
oh yeah,
we alluded to that a little bit.
Yeah. So I mean, if you took a look at any of these steps, so what you see here, again, there's assignments to this route ECR step. It's going to a group of people called Change Specialist 1, and you'll see here that there is an email that goes out with this one, a notification, a change management activity notification. So basically you just assign the email. So we have some out of the box, but you can do more if you want.
Right.
So that's totally possible, yeah?
Can you filter the view on the impact matrix to show only what is changing?
I'm not 100% sure.
I think the assumption there would be is that obviously you've set your impact matrix. You've made the choice. You've chosen the number of parts and documents and drawings that are being affected, and then your within that, the matrix itself, you'd be able to filter.
Oops, I was going to go look at one. Yay.
But while you pull one of those up, there's another question here about supporting deviations and stop shifts. It's more of a an operations type question there, but those are key things. Those might come from perhaps an MES system that you have a deviation because of a mismachined part, for example. But the change tools will accept those changes coming from the outside if you have the correct integrations built. But those are a little out of scope for today. As we get into other applications of manufacturing process planning and whatnot, I'm sure we'll start to refer to those.
Yeah, so like Dave said, there is an ability to sort by item action, you know what I mean? So instead of having it, this is showing it the structure, you know, laid out like it kind of is. But if I do sort by action item, I do have the ability to bring, you know, just the things that are being modified closer to the top, right? But it does, you know, it does sort the documents as well. So it's not all, it doesn't bring them all to the top, but it's something we could look at.
A follow-up on that, one part being changed used on 100 bombs, can you simplify? Yes, this would be an area you'd want to customize the view here. This impact matrix we built with this rather straightforward use to get everyone able to use it, but based on your product, if you have that situation, you'd be able to customize this to suit your needs. Question says, is there a WYSIWYG editor for notifications? Not yet. Right now, you type in the HTML of the email message. However, we are currently working on some new interface items that would give you instead of a text box for the input, that you could use an HTML editor to feed the information back into that. Or that's also an area that you could customize if that made sense for you.
Is that it?
That is all the questions we have. So we will call it done today, not have to worry about Lisa's typing.
Yes, oh, let Lisa go back to typing things wrong in her own privacy of her own cube.
So we have some upcoming demo series in the next coming weeks, content modeling framework, which is some new capability that we have that I think you'll like, the ability to custom design documents, custom design toolbars and whatnot. More in the visual collaboration, which is a very, very powerful tool that we provide, and then into the project management tools. So again, you'll be able to see this online. As soon as we get it up, we'll send you an email, and you can always download the latest version of Innovator from the web, aras.com/support/downloads. And with that, we will call it a day, and thank you everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.